even though this life gets tough, said you gotta keep fighting. And even though it gets hard, it's gonna get hard. You gotta keep striving. But you gotta keep striving. Through the fears and the loss, so the tears won't turn off. No cares, your heart's crying. Hold on to his words. Lean on him. It gets better.
The toughest war you ever face will be domestic. It's elementary. It's been this way for centuries. Cold War was raised against us. Take off them blinders, you will see. That it ain't about them gas prices. It's all about who whip the nicest. All about them deals on bundles. Harold Fleet don't make them up. Face beating red bottoms. Dead beats we hear about them. Fitted up from head to toe, but never at their children's door. Wonder why they dying by the dozens, but it's simple, yo. Just listen. It's time we stop ignoring facts. It's time we take our family back. Fix the root and then attack. Stop making moves without a plan. Control emotions, then we stand. Calling on my kingdom and to come together. Take this land. We gotta fight, our future depends. Get the head back in order, cause that's where it begins. Invest your all into your garden, water the roots to the end. Nurture the family tree and let the fruit feed all men. Just listen.
Even though this life gets tough, said you gotta keep fighting. And even though it gets hard, you gotta keep striving. Through the fears and the loss, so the tears won't turn.
Welcome to another episode of A Mile in My Shoes, where we ask the question, how can we say we know someone if we've never heard their story? Yo, tonight, we have a special guest from out of town, a young lady named Ashia Wilson. She has her own podcast where she do something of the sort, giving people an opportunity to share their stories. But she reached out to me because she saw a video on TikTok, and when she told me her story, I'm ready to hear the full story. She sent me a short clip of the story, but I'm going to need to hear this thing in real time, in real life, and I need to hear the full testimony because from what I heard, I'm not even going to waste any more time. Y'all drop some hearts for Ashia Wilson. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I went back today and I listened to the clip again. Is it real life?
It's real life. It's the real deal.
So for those who don't know you, introduce yourself and we getting straight into this story because I'm ready to hear this. I need the details on this testimony because like I said, I heard the short version, but I'm trying to hear the whole thing. Talk to it.
So my name is Ashia Wilson. I am from Michigan. I'm 33. I am a mother of one child. I have a son. And really, I do a whole lot. Like you said, I have my own podcast. I also work 2 jobs. And I am currently in school. And I have a book. And I also have a faith-based t-shirt and hoodie store.
The book, we're going to get into that book too. We're going to get into that book too.
Okay.
Walk us through the beginning of this testimony.
So like I was raised in a household with both mom and dad. My mom and dad were married for most of my life. But during that time, there was a lot of like drugs and alcohol in the picture. And with that along came like a bunch of physical and mental abuse. It mostly came from my mom. My dad wasn't abusive or anything like that. He was more so like the mediator in the situation or the one with the level head. There were times like when they would split up. And so there was a period of time like when they divorced. And so it just left my mom in the house. And I do have a sister as well. Mm-hmm. And so during that time, like we will be in and out of foster care with my grandparents. My grandma was retired due to like some health issues. So she would not feel well a lot of the time. So it'll be times like when she would need a break or my grandparents would need a break, we would go stay in Detroit or something like that with family. There were also times when we were placed into like a group home and also like the actual foster care system with like people we didn't know.
Right.
And so during this time, CPS, like they would come to the school and pick us up. They would come to the school and question us, like, all that, things like that. And like in my younger years, I didn't really know what drugs was. But as I got older, like I would awake in the middle of the night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I would just hear like, first of all, I would never forget. I will remember the smell of cigarettes, and my mom, like to my knowledge, she wasn't a smoker. And as I got older, like when I would awake in the middle of the night, like I would just lay there and listen. And I just knew that my mom like just wasn't sounding like herself.
Yeah.
And so it came a point in time like where my mom actually went to prison. And at this time we were placed in the care of my grandmother.
Yeah.
And upon her release, we were not able to see her. And so like one day my aunt, which was my mom's sister, she like snuck us to go see my mom. And when we knocked on the door, like my mom was so high, like out of her mind.
Yeah.
And she didn't even recognize us. And
Wow.
that was like really one of the first incidents that I really remember,
Yeah.
to where I started figuring out what drugs were. And so like a few years later, my mom and dad got remarried. And then they became, divorced again. And my mom just like was always on and off drugs. Like the older that we got, we started to notice when she would be on drugs, because when she would just be really mean to us, like super mean, like really mean to us.
Right.
It would be times where she would like sit on top of us and just beat us, would punch us, upside our head, like call us out our names, drag us by our hair, like just all types of stuff. And so during that last time that they got divorced, my mom, like she never had men around us or anything like that. That is one thing I can't say about my mom. And when I tell these stories about my mom, it's not like she did teach us a lot, and we had a lot of rough days, but not every single day was rough. We had some good days too.
Right.
But when I got into my teen years, my mom got this boyfriend, like, and this was the first time she had a boyfriend. This was, matter of fact, I didn't really like care for him, because it was like when she got with him, that's when her addiction had like skyrocketed.
Right.
He would call us like cousins and stuff over, and every single time they would come over, like my mom would end up high, and I just felt like he was enabling her just much more than what I had been used to.
Right. Right.
And so like as I began to get older, the main thing I wanted to know was like, why couldn't my mom give up this drug? Why was it so hard? Like, even with us going into the system, why was it so hard? Like, you just won't give it up. Like, what is it about this drug that you just cannot give up?
Yeah.
So when I was about 15, when my mom had this boyfriend, I remember coming home one day, and my mom was like on the couch high, and she was like hiding her face and stuff. And he was sitting on the couch, and I didn't say anything. I just went straight back to my bedroom. And so shortly after, my sister and I, we ended up leaving, and her boyfriend at the time came and picked us up. And so we went to my uncle's house, and shortly after I made it there, my mom called and was screaming and cursing and all this stuff, telling my uncle to tell me to come get all my stuff. Right. I had an hour to come get all my stuff, or she was going to throw it away. I'm 15 at this time. So I went and got my stuff, not even knowing where to take it to, what to do. Like,
so just kick you out completely?
Just kicked me out. When I got there, all my stuff was in black trash bags in the living room by the door. And the first person I could think of was this guy that I was working with. Him and I weren't dating or anything like that, but him and I, like, we worked together well. And probably like a week or two before that, just out the blue, he told me, like, if you ever need anything, or if you ever need to come stay with me, like, you can, and he was living with his mom at the time. We were young.
Right.
So I called him, and he let me bring my stuff over there, and I started staying with him. I was working and still going to school. And so shortly after that, like, I got introduced to ecstasy, and I got introduced to alcohol. And I also got introduced to homosexuality. And so.
And this is all at 15?
15. That's
real.
Yeah. And so I was still, going to school at this time. I was working part of the school day and going to school the other half because I was so far up in my credits, like I was in line with graduation. So I didn't have to attend school for an entire day. So I would work and stuff like that. But with me being out on my own, and at this time, like when I moved out from with him, I moved in with my first girlfriend. And she was 15 years older than me and had a child, and had a child. She had got me my first car. And she wasn't making me go to school. I would still go here and there, but I would be up gambling all night. We would be playing cards, gambling, drinking. And she's initially the one that introduced me to drugs. Yeah. And so it just went into a downward spiral from there. I ended up getting kicked out of high school like a few weeks before graduation. And I did end up going back and graduating the following year. But all through that time, like it was just drugs and alcohol. Being that young, I didn't realize like how bad I was hurting. I didn't understand any of that. A lot of the stuff that I dealt with in my like young years, I'd never dealt with that. I was never taught to deal with anything.
Right.
So her and I were together for about 4 or 5 months. And then I ended up meeting another female. And this time I packed up and moved from my hometown with her. And I stayed about an hour away from where I'm originally from. I stayed there for almost 3 years. And it was going okay for a while. But then things got really just abusive. Like she started treating me like the fact that she knew I didn't have family there, And so at this time, this is when I got introduced to the game of prostitution. Okay. I had a female friend that I knew for a long time, and she was already in the game of prostitution. She would work the girls and stuff like that, put women online, to sell their bodies and stuff like that. So she started showing me how all that worked. And the game. And so we would go out of town, get hotel rooms, and be up for days. And I was just watching how fast the money was coming. Right. So then she started teaching me how to answer the phones and set the appointments and all this behind the scenes work.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started like riding to the calls with the girls and sitting in. At first I was just collecting the money. I would just go to the door and collect the money and things like that. And then I started sitting into the calls to see how stuff really worked.
Right.
So from there, I'm posting ads online, stuff like that. So one day I had a lady reach out to me saying that she had a fantasy of being with another woman, right? So with me already actively dealing with women, I decided to do this one myself.
That was the test run.
That was the test run. And from there, I was in the game. Yeah. And at this time I was working 2 jobs and hustling with the prostitution, and it was so much money coming in. I'm like 17 at this time.
That's what I'm thinking in my mind. How does your mind even wrap around all of that at 17?
At 17.
Man.
At 17. And then like with the whole prostitution thing, like I was recruiting other girls. So I would be running girls. Like I would drop a girl off, then while she's working that call, jump on the highway to go take somebody else and be ripped. Like it was a hot mess. Now that I'm
so you went from the call and collector to the you turn your first one, and now you pimp. At 17.
At 17. And you know what? And the person that I was dating at that time, the girl that I had moved out of town with, she would ride with us. And she would ride with us and be like security to make sure nothing happened. Like, she was letting me do my thing,
Right.
Because I guess, money, like when it comes to money and when at the pace it was coming in, I mean, a couple $1,000s a day. It was coming in, and at that, like, she didn't really care what I was doing. She was just so amused by the money that was coming in.
Right.
And so all this, of course, I'm drinking and stuff. But during this time, I met a guy friend, and he introduced me to cocaine. Okay. He introduced me to cocaine. And that initial time, like when I tried it, I didn't really care for it. It didn't really do anything for me. So I didn't try it again for a while. So I was staying out of town with a girl, but things ended up going sour. Like one night, we were hanging out, and she brought her friend and a couple other women back to our home that we were living in. And it just one thing led to another. She ended up dragging me out the house, locking me out the house, all this stuff. So later on that night, I called my dad and I was crying, told him what happened. And I asked him, could he send for me? And he did. The next morning, he sent my uncle to pick me up, and whatever I could fit in the backseat with me, that's what I took. Everything else, I left my car, I left everything there.
Wow.
And I came back home. And at this time, I came back home and I moved in with my sister. And my mom helped me get enrolled in school. And due to me not working, I was using my school checks. You know, first one, I bought me a car. And then I paid my sister rent for like 5 or 6 months for me to stay there. And then after that semester was over with, I ended up getting my own place.
Yeah.
And so at this time, I was just drinking and clubbing a lot. When I say we would club and drink, and like that's when I really started. Before I moved out back out on my own, like I introduced my sister to drugs, and we would just party. And you know, she had kids, but I didn't have any kids at this time.
Right.
So partying, drinking. I mean, I would be in the club probably about 5 times a week, if not 6 times a week during the week. And I was still going to school and still, you know, but I was using so many drugs just to feel like I could do that.
Right, right.
So I ended up moving into my own place. And during this time, I got, I'm still drinking, partying, all this good stuff, going to school. And one night I was at this bar, right? And we were coming out. Something broke out in the parking lot, so they stopped the club early. And as we're coming out, it's a bunch of police like in the parking lot. And as they're out there, they're just stopping random people, asking them for their name, ID, stuff like that, just taking people to jail. So I saw one of my longtime like male friends out there, and he has like a trouble pass or whatever. So I'm telling him like, you know, come on, let's go. You know, he's out there arguing with his auntie or something. So in the midst of me trying to get him from out of that vicinity so he's not in jail that night, me and his auntie break out into a fight. Okay. And my sister was already sitting in the passenger seat of my car, so she doesn't even know that I'm fighting or anything. I'm right like on the outside of my car. And we end up fighting. The fight get broke up, and I get ready to get in my car. And so as I'm like grabbing a door handle, I feel her run back up on me, and you know, it's fighting me from behind. So I turn around and fight her again. And she hit me in my eye with a high heel, like the heel part. And when I say my eye closed up instantly, and I could just feel blood just running all down my face.
Wow.
Just all down my face. They ended up having to call the ambulance for me. I ended up having to go to the hospital that night. And because I had drugs and alcohol in my system, they had to wait till the next morning to do surgery on my eye.
Right.
When I went into that surgery room, they were telling me that I initially was going to lose my eye. And God worked it out. You know, God was in there with me, and it was a successful surgery. But following that, like for 2 months, I had to wear a patch over my eye. My eye was closed, like all that.
Yeah.
So that kind of slowed me down a little bit for a little while, but
for a little bit,
just for a hot second. But once once my eye opened back up and I got back to it, because during that time, like I couldn't drive or anything. I would have my cousin drive me around in my car. But the minute that my eye opened back up, like I was right back to the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right back to the same stuff. So, a couple years go by, I'm single, partying, all this good stuff, but I'm still dealing with women, women. And so I meet another young woman at the store one day, and I think I said something to her, and we exchanged numbers, and then we started seeing each other like romantically.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up I let her move in with me, and I got her a job where I was working at, and like it was it was not like too long after she became so insecure, so controlling, like just it was terrible. Like over the years, you know, all the stuff that my sister and I have been through together, like we have always been close due to the things that we have been through because, you know, it was so many nights and stuff where we cried and talked about, I can't wait till I get grown because of just of everything, you know. So growing up, like that was my best friend. And we've just always continued that. And with me being in this relationship, it will be times where the person I'm with telling me that this can't be your sister. And even if it is, y'all got to be sleeping together because nobody is that close with their sister.
Right.
And I'm like, what?
That
you know,
full out control. Don't want you connected to anybody. Period.
To anybody. Like even one time, like it was one year my dad had a birthday dinner and I come from a very large family. So it was about 50 of us at a restaurant. And I'm asking her, I'm like, do you want to go with me? And she's like, no. And she didn't want me to go either, you know? And so I had never been with anybody like that, you know? Even when I had been with men, I have never been in a controlling, abusive, or no type of, you know, wild relationship with a man. I've never had those issues with a man. And so this was all new to me. And so I just got sick and tired of it. So her and I were working at the same place together. And one night she like assaulted me while at work. And shortly after she got terminated, it wasn't due to that. It was due to something else. Mm-hmm. And in her termination, like they told me that, you know, she couldn't be on the property or they would terminate me. So one day I'm working and I'm outside smoking a cigarette. This is back when I smoked cigarettes. Talking to one of my coworkers and she pulls up and she calls me over to the truck that she was driving. And she like grabbed a hold to my neck and is like dragging me in the parking lot, like through the window. And so I finally get free. I had to call the police because it was like all this stuff was going on camera. And so I'm like, I had to call the police because to keep my job pretty much.
You was going to lose. Yeah.
Exactly. So she ended up leaving before the police got there. I filed a police report. So as I'm sitting, and mind you, I'm a shift manager at this time, you know. Mm-hmm. So as I'm closing out my shift, and now that I look back, this was nothing but God talking to me. I could hear the still small voice in the back of my mind telling me like, check your bank account. So I checked the bank account. We had opened up this joint account. And I had been saving money in the account to create like a cushion or whatever.
Right.
So as I'm sitting there at work after all this happened, I checked my account. She then went and cleared my account.
Wiped it out.
Wiped it while I'm at work after this whole assault incident, right? So after that, I go home. And when I get home, I notice my car done been keyed up. I go in my house. She can cut up my furniture, took a whole bunch of my stuff out, cut up my bed, like all this stuff, right? And I was just, when I say it hurt my feelings so bad, it hurt my feelings so bad. Like I was so hurt. Like, you know, you of all people, you see that, no, I've never been one to get a handout. Like I've been literally out here on my own since a young age and it has been working, you know, and just everything that I have, like it's nothing was given to me. It was always, I worked for it. So how dare you do this to me? You know, so after that, I'm like, I'm done with women. I'm done with women. Right. You know, I didn't want to end up in a situation where I'm in jail or prison. So I went back to seeing this guy that I had met when I came back home. Him and I would see each other. He would always like want to settle down and things like that. But I was not interested in that with him because I was so into women. Like I just wasn't, I didn't want to play house with him.
Yeah.
So after me feeling like I didn't want to deal with women anymore, I called him over one night. And this was my first time dealing with him in 4 years. And so to make a long story short, like I ended up pregnant after that. You know, this is my first kid. So at first, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to have a kid, you know.
Right.
I don't have no kids. Like I done made it this long. At this time, I'm 26, 25.
Right.
So I'm like, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to have kids. But I couldn't come to the terms of an abortion because I even living in that lifestyle, I was raised in church, you know.
Right.
So I didn't want to violate God like that, you know, and violate myself like that. So I'm like, and one thing my mom always told me was like, don't ever use abortion as a method of birth control. If you make a baby, you need to take care of your kids.
Yeah.
So I ended up having, well, let me rewind a little bit. So while I was in that pregnancy, I was about 10 weeks pregnant. I met another lady. Well, I didn't meet her because I've been knowing her for years. And her father and my father were really good friends. And so her and I started hanging out. But I didn't really like sleep with her right off the bat. I'm like, at this point, I was just sick and tired of being hurt. So I'm like, I want to develop this friendship and be friends with the person that I'm going to see. So her and I started seeing each other, and, you know, it was feelings that got involved. So one day as we were in the car, I handed her my ultrasound pictures. Because prior to that, she didn't know that I was pregnant.
Right.
But I wanted to give her the opportunity, like, to make the decision. Like, you know, I told her, I'm like, I don't want to force you into anything. But I do want you to know, like, I wasn't expecting for any feelings to be involved, but now that they are, like, you deserve to know, you know, and if you don't want to deal with me, like, I understand that too.
Right.
And so she said that she was excited, and she said that she wanted to, you know, be a part of the journey. So, and she was there at every single appointment, just doing everything, you know. And we ended up having the baby. He was healthy and all that good stuff. She was there with me at the hospital. And I ended up giving the baby her last name. A month after we had the baby, her and I got married. Mm-hmm. And about 6 months after I had my son, I ended up getting postpartum depression. At the time, I didn't know what it was. Okay. Right, at the time, I just was not feeling like myself. And it all started with, like, all the stuff that I went through with my childhood. I had never revisited those moments. I had never dealt with it. When I got through that stuff, I just have, like, you know how a dog go in the yard somewhere and dig a hole and bury something, and just, that's pretty much what I had did with my whole entire childhood. Like,
look, I like said, you was just lifing.
Just life and trying to maintain just a decent mindset just to make it through the next day, you know, because even in my, like, when I got out on my own, when I was like 16, I was homeless. I ended up in a homeless shelter for like 2 weeks. And then I ended up, like, on the streets. I would used to be walking around all night. I would sit on some people porches, hoping that I didn't wake them up, just to be able to rest my legs. And then when the first city bus would run, I would just ride it around all day, you know? And so just different things like that, you know, like, and at the time, like, I didn't have no family. I didn't have any family. My sister, she ended up having her first kid when she was like 12. And so she ended up moving in with her boyfriend. You know, I didn't have an alternate family, like, to have my back like that. So I was in the streets, like, just trying to figure it out. And so, you know, I had not dealt with a lot of the stuff that I had been through in the past. So, like, having my son and looking at him, it made me think about everything that I did not want for him. Like, you know, it made me revisit all the moments.
That when you look at that life in front of you, that slows everything down.
It does. It absolutely does. And you know what? I thought that I was in love with my sister kids, but until I gave birth to one of my own, like, that's a magnitude of love and just everything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, this is an innocent soul. This is an innocent life that I brought onto this earth. Like, you know, so I have to make sure that I provide and just do everything that was not done for me in those years. So revisiting all that stuff, when I say it was hectic, it was hurtful. It was worse than the first initial time, you know? And so I sought out a therapist. But prior to that, that's when I found my way back to cocaine.
Oh, that next time around too.
It was so much worse. It was so much worse. And you know what? During the time that I had found my way back to cocaine, like, my wife at the time, she didn't know that I had started using. She was out of town one night, and I had snuck to a bar, a gay bar, And my friend that I had went with, we went into the bathroom to use it, and all the stalls were packed. So I'm like, I gotta use it. So I went into the stall with her, and when I got in there, instead of her using the bathroom, she was in there doing cocaine. And she like, you want some? And I'm like, yeah, let me see. And I did it. And from that point on, like, you know, and so my wife at the time didn't know that I was using cocaine. Like, I felt like she was going to judge me. She was going to leave me. Like, I didn't want her to think that I was any different than what she knew me to be.
So now you got the habit back up, but now you got to hide it.
Now I got to hide it.
Oh, man.
Now I got to hide it. And you know what? The same person that I went to the bar with that night is the same girl. She used to do my nails at this time, right? And so when I would go over there, her and I would get high together, you know? And one night, her and I were sitting there, she did my nails, and we were talking and getting high. And I look up, the sun is coming up. So I miss being at home. You know, I'd have been over here all night. So
got some explaining to do.
Yeah. So at the time, you know, my wife at the time is swearing up and down that I'm intimate with this person, and I really was not. You know, but I can't tell her that I'm using. I'm just, you know, arguing with her, you know, because I know that I really wasn't doing anything with that woman, but I was getting high with her, you know. So I'm having to hide it up until another time my wife goes out of town for like a family reunion or something, right? And so she calls me and she's like, guess what I did? And I'm like, what you do? And she's like, I tried cocaine. You know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, we in the money, because now I ain't gotta hide what I'm doing, right. You know. And so from that point, like, we started using together. You know, we started using together, and really that really was a ladder to the height of my addiction, because now I don't have to hide it. Now I can do it in the comfort of my own home,
wide open.
Now I can do it. Now I ain't gotta stay out late. You know. Now I don't have to stay out late. Like, my addiction prior to this, my addiction had got so bad where I just didn't even care. Like, I would leave her at home for like 2 days with the baby because I was out getting high, you know. And I would just take, okay, you think I'm cheating, and I'm not. But what's it gonna change? You're not leaving, you know. So I'm just gonna stay out and enjoy myself, and I'll argue with you when I get there, like whatever. It was that bad, you know. And then her and I started using together for a few months. And then she stopped and I kept going. And at this time, that's when my depression like skyrocketed. It would be days where I would wake up out of my sleep crying. Like, you know, prior to this, I had heard of postpartum, I had heard of depression, but like, for those of y'all that's out there that hear somebody say that they're struggling with depression, like, depression is a lifestyle. It's completely real. It's so real, and it's real. Like,
what were some of the signs that let you know that it was more than just I'm having a little something? No, this is full out depression. What let you know that it was something more serious than just I'm having a few bad days?
I felt like I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I felt like I was having a nervous breakdown. Like, no matter what I did, I couldn't shake it. I would wake up out of my sleep crying. I would just be crying for nothing. Like, it didn't have to be anything wrong with me. I felt like I was losing my mind. I was so unhappy. Like, my unhappiness was unhappy. Like, it was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible.
My unhappiness was unhappy. Yeah, that's serious.
It was terrible. I don't wish that pain upon anybody. It was such a void, and it was nothing that would fill it. And I just resorted back to what I knew, drugs and alcohol, because that was the friend that I had over the years that never let me down. You know, that friend always gave me an escape. That friend was one that I could just kick it with and wouldn't be judged. And, you know, so I went back to what I knew, starting at a young age.
Yeah.
You know?
It's crazy listening to you explain it like that as a friend, because when you think about it, that's what it turns into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the drugs get me.
Yep.
The alcohol get me. And like you said, never let you down. Yep. Always there. You really start to see it like an individual.
Yep.
To fill that hole.
Absolutely.
The cold part about it, they never feel it though.
It don't. It don't at all. At all. And you know what? you don't realize how bad it is until you actually get out of it. For those of us that are blessed enough to be able to have the strength to get out of it, because some people don't, my heart goes out to people like that, but I understand both sides of the spectrum, because I have been addicted to more than one drug. I have tried more than one drug. I've tried multiple drugs, and I've tried a lot.
Look, my heart breaks with compassion. I know how real it is.
Absolutely.
No joke.
It's not. It's a lifestyle.
And that's why I said the way you explain it as being a friend, like, yeah, it's real.
Yeah. Because we think in while we're in that, we think it's like we think that it's something, or I'm not gonna say someone because it's not a person, but we think that it's something that we can lean on. Like, we don't realize how much damage we're actually doing to ourselves, because you do have that temporary escape,
Yeah.
And yeah, so, and this is the thing, like, even in the height of my addiction, when I was using cocaine, I would be at work getting high. Because at the time I was a manager at the place that I was working at. So I didn't have to be on the floor,
Right.
I had people working, and I could just wander around. I would be at work getting high. I would be at work drinking. I was out of control, and thank God, like, now that I look back at it, thank God I've never lost a job to drugs or alcohol. I've never been incarcerated for drugs or alcohol. Like, I've never been in any type of trouble due to drugs and alcohol. And I have had some extreme addiction,
So you was functioning, fully functioning.
I was. Because part of me was like, I got my first job when I was 14, so working and like really just hustling and grinding it out. It has always been like just what I've known, because I really haven't had a choice. I've never been one to have a whole lot of friends. I've had a few of them. But for the most part, like, I have had family, as far as like my cousins and stuff. Those have been my so-called friends over the years. Like, I don't really go out into the streets looking for friends. I've never been one to look for like friends to validate me or anything like that. And probably due to the fact that I have spent a lot of my years by myself, like in the streets, and also, like, I always felt like I've seen the way that people can do each other dirty. And so it's like, I'm not fond of that. I would rather be somewhere doing my dirt by myself. And if you see me while I'm doing my dirt, then okay, you see me while I'm doing my dirt. But to have somebody ride side by side and be in my business, to be able to like put me down, I don't like, I just haven't been that type of person. But so while dealing with this postpartum depression, I started seeing a therapist, right? And so it kind of felt good to have someone to talk to, because the first initial therapist that I had sought out, like, I felt like I was her paycheck. So I did one session with her and I quit. And so I found this older lady, and she felt more of like a mother figure, like a grandma to me. So it felt good to be able to go talk to her, but then still, I wasn't getting the fullness of therapy because I didn't tell her about my drug use. At this time, I was actively using drugs. And so I can only tell her so much because she knows I have this baby at home. She knows, and so under certain laws, like under certain circumstances, she would have to call the people.
Automatic no.
So therapy wasn't therapying for me, like, because I wasn't getting the fullness. I couldn't give the fullness of me to it.
You're not getting that full release of the full truth of what's going on. So it's,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is how bad my depression had got. She was ready to, she was talking about committing me to a psychiatric facility.
Yeah, you was.
Yeah, I was hurting real bad, I was hurting real bad, just hurting. Like, it was years and years of hurt and pain that just was coming to the surface.
Yeah.
So I continue, using drugs and alcohol. And me and my wife ended up, we were still together for some years. Her and I ended up splitting because of some infidelity on her behalf. But I do know, like, now that I'm in my right mind, I do take full sole responsibility for the ways that I treated her, because I was not the nicest person due to my drug and alcohol use. When I would be coming down off of a high, like, I could not I didn't want to be bothered, you know,
Yeah.
or just like the days where I would just leave her and then don't answer my phone because I'm going to chase this high. You know, I just was wrong just as a person, you know. So we ended up splitting because of some infidelity issues with her. And it was like on a more than once basis. And so shortly after that, like, I started seeing this guy that I was working with. And it was due to me, like, because I just felt like with her, I'm not going to continue to be faithful to you if you're not, you know, if I don't care if am staying out getting high. I'm not, you know, I'm just not going to deal with that. So I started seeing this guy that I worked with. And at this time, her and I were like, she had moved out. I came home one day from work. She had all of her stuff. So I'm, instead of being like in a 2 household with 2 incomes and stuff like that, now I'm trying to shake back and catch up on bills and stuff like that. Because when she left, like, she cut off the lights and utilities and stuff is in her name, and you know, and so it just caused a whole lot of, it was really uncomfortable for a minute for me. So by the grace of God, you know, I got it figured out. But I started seeing this guy. It was my supervisor that I was working with, and him and I started dealing pretty heavily. So you know, she didn't like that. Like, and matter of fact, he stayed right across the street from where her and I were staying. That's the crazy part. She just did not like that. So like when I would be over there with him, she would pop up and just act crazy. And so her and I, like, we stayed married for years. Like, we just recently got a divorce. Because it's so easy to get married and it's so hard to get out of it. It is so hard to get out of it, you know? And so, like, for a long time, she did not want to let me out of it. I had to keep refiling and things like that. So as her and I are split, she's off living her own life. And, you know, me, I'm just working like I always do. Let me back up some. So prior to us splitting, there was a day where her best friend, or who used to be her best friend, there was a altercation. I went into my wife's phone one day and see pictures of some girl, right? And me trying to figure out who this is, I take the girl's pictures and post them on my social media account, not really saying nothing. I'm just like, you know, if anybody knows who this is, let me know. Give her my number, like, you know. And I posted my number. Come to find out, it's my wife's best friend's cousin, you know, and she's dealing with her best friend's cousin. So the best friend her and I ended up getting into it, and she was just really just talking to me really reckless, you know. And at this point, I'm asking my wife, like, you know, this is your friend. She's come over to our home. I fed her, you know, all this stuff. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to sit here and let her talk to me like this? Right. So from there, you know, she got on there and said something to her, whatever. Well, this must have really just like took girl to the next level. So she ended up revealing, you remember I told you it was some infidelity between my wife and I. Well, she had ended up sleeping with this guy. So her best friend ends up airing all the business out on Facebook, right? Not knowing that my wife had already told me all this. You know, we had already worked past all this, but it was just the principle, you know, like this is, and I was upset on behalf of my wife, like regardless of what she done told, this is supposed to be your best friend. You just don't do people like that. If she trusted you to tell you that, you're supposed to be holding on to that, you know? Yeah. So it upset me. So we ended up getting into an altercation. And shortly thereafter, the girl's vehicle ended up getting damaged, right? And so she pressed charges on me behind this for malicious destruction of property. And then like the day or two after that, we ended up getting a surprise visit. We had just moved into a new place. We had ended up getting a surprise visit. It's 2 people knocking on our door. And we opened up the door, and it's Child Protective Services at the door, right? And so they come in, they tell us that they had got this anonymous tip, all this crazy stuff, saying that we don't feed our son and we don't bathe them. And it was just a whole bunch of lies. Like I have been really protective over my son over the years due to like how much I went through, you know, regardless of my drug and alcohol use. Like that's another reason why I would stay out and do my drugs, because I don't want, you know, my son to be able to look at me like this, you know, or be doing this around him, like, you know. So I knew everything was lies. And you know, they're in our house, like while my son is right there, they're going through every room, make sure we got power, checking the refrigerators, making sure we got all this stuff. And I felt so violated and so disrespected. Like, you could say a whole lot about me, but as far as the way I take care of my child, like, that was crossing the line, you know? So charges got pressed. And I ended up with a felony warrant for my arrest. Yeah. And so someone called me and told me, like, you know, because here where I'm at, if like we have a warrant website where anybody with active warrants, you can look on the list to see if your name is on there. So somebody called me and told me that I had a warrant out for my arrest. So I went and turned myself in. You know, because I'm not gonna run from this. I'm gonna face the music, because if I don't, they're gonna put my photo on the news, you know. So I might as well go do this so I'm not embarrassed, you know. And with this whole incident, like with the actual incident, it was other people there too, like when all this went down, you know, but I just never mentioned nobody's name. I was the only one that the charges got pressed on. And so I kind of like bit down on it and just dealt with it, you know. So I went and turned myself in. They let me back out on a what you call a PR bond, like a personal recognizance bond. And they kept pushing my court date out for like 2 years. You know, the initial charges were filed in December of 2017. They kept pushing it out until like May of 2019. They start rescheduling the court dates, and I'm going back to court, you know. So every time I would go in front of the judge, like, he would lock me up. You know, I spent May of 2019, I spent Mother's Day in jail, away from my son. And then he let me back out for 2 weeks, and I pushed this whole thing to trial, you know, because they didn't have any evidence on me. The girl lied and said she seen me, but I knew the facts of what really happened, you know, but I couldn't say anything because I can't tell what really happened. If I do, y'all gonna know what I know, you know?
Right.
So I just wrote it out. And, so June of 2019, the trial ended up coming, and they found me guilty by jury trial. And honestly, I think that it was due to me not taking a plea bargain. You know, it really just upset the judge.
Yeah, buddy.
Yep. So the initial thing was I was supposed to get 18 months probation. I had signed an agreement with that. So I go in front of the judge. Well, right before I go in front of the judge, I meet with my attorney, and he's telling me, like, the judge is going to ask you if you have anything to say. Decline. So I'm like, okay, I had never been in trouble for a felony conviction. Like, I've never, you know what I'm saying? Maybe a little driving on suspended license, traffic tickets or something like that in my early years, but I've never been in real trouble until this. So that's exactly what happened. The judge asked me, I declined. And when I say that was the wrong thing to do, the judge spazzed out on me. Spazzed out on me, and he overrode the 18-month probation. So he gave me 90 days in the county jail, and he took away like good time, and he also gave me 2 years of probation. So that broke my heart right then and there. That broke my heart.
On a bad day. Oh yeah.
That really broke my heart, you know. And I went to court thinking I was leaving on probation, you know. So my son is waiting at my sister's house, like, you know, and I am going to jail. So I when I say I cried for the first week, I cried for the first week. I didn't know what to do about it. I cried for the first week, you know. But while in there, I'm like, God, what did I do so wrong? You know what I'm saying? To where my life then spiraled down to this. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a bad person. I've never been one, like, no matter how many bad days, or even on my worst day, I've just never been like an ill will type person to do people wrong and stuff like that.
Right.
And so being in there, like, I started getting into the swing of things, like getting up early in the morning before I do anything else, reading my Bible, like, you know. And I started noticing, like, so, like, let me back up the year before this, it was one day I went to my sister's house, right? And you remember I told you with this whole case, it was other people that was involved, but I had never told anything. These people were supposed to be coming up to, you know, showing up to court for me, like, just support, you know, just to have my back while I'm going through this, because really we should all be in the same situation.
Right.
So I get to my sister's house the year prior to this on the 4th of July, and these same people is sitting at my sister's dining room table, you know, and she know what's going on. And so my mom is there, and my sister. So my mom, when I walk in, I was on fire, like ready to fight, you know. And so I'm getting ready to leave, and my mom is like, you know, what's wrong? What's going on? So I tell her, and so my mom made these people leave. And so this, after they left, like this, my mom checked my sister about this. And so it led, one thing led to another. We all in there fighting, like we all in there fighting, you know,
A royal.
each other. Yeah, each other. And that night, I said some really hurtful things to my mom just in the heat of the moment. I really did. Just some things that, you know, due to my past and the way I was raised and some things that I felt like I didn't get, you know, because like a few years prior, my mom did apologize, you know, and it was good to have that apology. But in all honesty, like it did not mend the things that had happened to me, you know. So I said some things out of anger that night, and my mom did not talk to me no more after that. So being in that cell, when I started getting in that Bible, what I would do is I would just open up random spots and just start reading. And I started to notice a pattern. And this was, I think, the first time I really realized, like, this is my first time I really realized that God was speaking to me. He started leading me to scriptures on honor your mother and your father. Uh-oh. So in that, I knew God was checking me about what happened the year prior, right? So I'm like, as soon as I get out, I have to like make this right with my mom. So I did my time. And when I say like that was some of the loneliest time, like being incarcerated, you don't got nobody to face. Like you have to learn how to deal with yourself. Like you have to learn how to deal with yourself. You have nothing to do but think.
Nowhere to run from you.
Nowhere to run. So the day that I got out from being released, my sister picked me up. She took me back to her house. And like the moment I walked out of jail, that's when my probation had started, right? So the day I walked out, my sister took me back to her house. She made this big extravagant breakfast. But from being in jail, like I had lost a bunch of weight. I just didn't really have the appetite once I walked out. I'm like, where is a beer? That's what I want, you know? Right. So I'm sitting there drinking me a beer. My mom called and she wants us to come over. So we end up going over there and she opened up the door. And the first thing I did was apologize to my mom. You know what I'm saying? I apologize. I had no right disrespecting you like that. Like, I know better, you know? And so I'm so deeply sorry. And, you know, she cried and she gave me a hug. And it just felt good, like, to have my mom, like, you know, because even regardless of, like, the things that had happened in the past, my mom has definitely instilled some things into us on how to be a woman, how to carry ourselves. She taught us about grocery shopping, about credit, how to clean your house, how to clean yourself. Like, you know, she taught us the valuable things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So after that, like me and my mom was right back, you know, to it. She started helping me look for a job. Oh, and mind you, while I was incarcerated, like I had all my stuff in storage, right? And I ended up losing my storage because I couldn't pay for it. I was in jail. So walking out of jail, I had nothing, like, you know, nothing. Auctioned off. I lost my vehicle. I lost everything while I was in jail. So when I got out, like when me and my mom started spending time together again, like she let me come over one day and, you know, she's like, go through my closet, anything you want, you know, you can have it. She gave me jewelry, gave me a purse. Like, you know, she would take me to the hair store to, you know, buy stuff so I could do my hair, just so I could feel human, you know? So, about 2 weeks after I got out, she was having some issues with her blood pressure and she called me while I was at my cousin's house and, she called me crying and I'm just like, you know, what's up? And she just like, just saying how bad her head hurts, all this stuff. And she had been to 2 hospitals. They kept sending her home with over-the-counter medicine. Her blood pressure was high, all this stuff. So I'm like, do you want me to come stay a couple days with you? You know what I'm saying? So you could just rest and I'll help you around the house. And she's like, no, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. So the next day she come get me and she takes me to the hair store and give me a few dollars and buy me a pack of cigarettes. And then the following day, which was like Labor Day, she comes over to my sister's house and she's cooking and my sister's cooking and she just having a talk with us, like a life to life talk with us. So like over the years, my mom will always talk to us about like, when I die, you know, I want this to happen. I want to be cremated, all this stuff. Well, this particular day, like she started having conversations, but in like more depth where I had never heard before, you know? And I'm like, asking her, I'm like, you know, is something wrong? Like, do I need to know something, you know? And she like, don't worry about it, you know? Because she was always the type, like, even if something was wrong, she wouldn't tell us. You know what I'm saying? Years before this, she had told us that she had breast cancer twice and had went through all this by herself, you know, and she didn't even tell us because she will always say, y'all got y'all own kids, y'all got y'all own life. I don't want to worry y'all. And I'm like, what? You know, like, why wouldn't you tell me that? So a few hours later, like, she have the same talk with my sister. My sister, like, why are you talking like that? Like, nothing's gonna happen to you, you know? And she would just always say, we all gotta die one day, like, and we never know. So she ended up playing basketball with the kids for a little bit, and something to just like take pictures. My mom hated being on camera. She didn't like pictures or nothing like that, but something to just like snap some pictures, you know?
Yeah.
And so we spent that time together. She made her a few plates and she left. So the following day, I'm sitting at my ex-wife's house drinking me a beer, and she's gone somewhere, and my phone ring. And at first I wasn't gonna answer. It was my mom. So I answer it, and she like, you know, asked me what I'm doing. I'm like, nothing. And I asked her what she was doing. She said, I just got off work. I'm about to go home and change my clothes and get out to do Uber and make some extra money. And she started having that when I die talk again. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, is this something I need to know? And she like, I gotta go, bye. And she hung up. So the next day, she's supposed to take me to go. I had finally got a job. Mind you, this is 2.5 weeks after I got out of incarceration, right?
Right.
She's supposed to take me to go sign papers because I had finally got this job that she had took me to do the interview for. So I'm on probation. So I'm at my sister's house. She's gone to work and she was working like first shift or something. So she come texting me like, where you at? I'm like, I'm at your house. I'm getting ready to leave so I can do paperwork for this job. She's like, okay, stay there. I need to talk to you. It's important. A few minutes later, my auntie come text me, where you at? I'm like, I'm at my sister's house. Like, you know, what's up? Stay where you at. I need to talk to you. My first initial thought is I'm thinking my PO got a hit out on me. Like, you know, she about to ride down on me and come pick me up for some reason. But I'm like, and then I'm like, would my, you know, when my family like set me up like that, you know, I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I'm just anxious at this point. So I'm just like, I done shifted from thinking my PO is coming to, I hope everybody and everything is okay. You know, my first initial thought, like I thought my grandma had passed away maybe, or I got a cousin that's out there on drugs real bad. Maybe something had happened to her, right? So as I'm pacing through the house, I see my sister and my auntie pull up at the same time. So I walk back into the living room and they come walking in the house. Soon as I lay eyes on them, I could tell both of them was crying, had been crying. Right? I'm like, I didn't know what, you know, I'm like looking at them like, what's wrong, y'all? Like, you know, and they both paused for a minute and then they looked at each other. And my auntie is like, your mother, like your mom is gone. I'm like, what? You know, like what? And she like, she's gone. When I say I lost it, like everything I just went into a daze. Like I went into a complete daze. Like, you know, like, on the movie, right? When somebody is too close to like a bomb going off and their ears just ring. Like, you know, I felt just like that.
Yeah, man.
Like everything got so fuzzy for a minute. I just was screaming. Like, I just remember saying, oh my God, like what happened that fast? I had just talked to her hours before that. And so come to find out, like my mom didn't show up for work that morning. And so the job called my auntie because my auntie was the emergency contact. So when they had went over there, they had to have the landlord open the door. And my mom was in the bathroom on the floor dead. Like, you know, they said that her throat had closed up while she was sitting on the bed eating. Like her TV and stuff was still on, you know, and her food was still sitting there on the bed. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, you know, but I will say this, like, I never once turned around and cursed God. Like, I never cursed God. I just never cursed God. I was deeply hurt. I'm not going to lie. I was deeply hurt.
Yeah.
And in that moment, like, the first thing I could think of, take me to the liquor store. Like, take me to the liquor store, you know, take me to the liquor store. And that's what we did. We went and got a fifth of Hennessy and we just went out. They got like this lakefront. Me and my sister just went out there and cried. Like we just went out there and was crying. And the following day, like we had to go view my mom's body and stuff. We have been up all night drinking, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm on probation. I'm not supposed to be drinking around no drugs, no guns, none of that.
Yeah.
I went to the funeral home drunk out of my mind. I went drunk out of my mind. And me and my auntie ended up having a disagreement, you know, because like when my mom had died, you know, me and my sister had never had to bury someone that was close to us. You know, my mom had already clearly told us what she wanted to be done, but my mom was like a really straight to the point and about her business type woman. So the one thing that I wanted to do was to go into her house and see what paperwork that she has so that we could close out her accounts with a $0 balance. You know, I just wanted to send my mom off with owing nothing to nobody, you know. But in order for us to get in there, like, you know, I'm like, we don't have to keep my auntie. When the coroner's office was picking up my mom's body, my auntie was off to the side, sweet talking the landlord. And they changed the locks and they gave my auntie the key to my mom's house, right? So later on that night when all this happened, the first day that my mom died, my auntie, I called my mom's phone just to hear a voicemail. My auntie is at my mom's house, in her house, answering her phone. You know, and I'm like, yo, what are you doing? Like, you know, so the next day at the funeral home, my auntie is giving me the car key to my mom's car for me to go pick up the car. So I'm like, where are the keys at to her house so we can get in her house and see what we need to see, you know? And she's like, well, just call me. I'll come let y'all, I get off work tomorrow at such and such time. I'll come let y'all in. Why do you need to let us in? This is my mother. Like, you know, this is my mom. You know, I don't need you to let me in.
Right.
And so I said that to her, you know, and she got upset and I told her off. I did. You know, I didn't call her out her name or anything, but I told her off. And so the next day, I get a call from my PO saying that my auntie had called her and she wanted me to come into her office and blow.
Oh.
And so when I got there the next day, I blew dirty, a .03 the following day, you know, and I told my PO, my mom just died yesterday, you know,
Right.
my mom just died yesterday, you know, and so it just was a lot. And so we ended up cremating my mom, and we ended up spreading her ashes at the beach. But just trying to navigate probation and stuff, I was having to go drop. I was having to go blow. They had me about 6 classes a week, all while trying to find a job. And mind you, when you're on probation here in Michigan, you have to pay for the classes. You have to pay for the drops. You have to pay for the blows. You have to pay for every time that you see these people.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm trying to do this with no job, you know, and it will be times where they will, like, if you show up and you don't have the money to do your job or money to do your blow, they mark you as a dirty drop. Okay. It would be times where I didn't have the money. I would show up to class and didn't have the money. I think it was like $50 a week or something. It was $26 per visit. And I would have to go to this one particular class twice a week, you know, and I would have 2-3 other classes. It was a time I showed up to class, didn't have the money. They put me out of the class and marked me as I didn't come. You know, that's a violation of probation.
Right.
So it was just a lot dealing with probation. And then I kept getting caught drinking, you know, because that's what I knew to do, you know, and it's not no excuse, but that's just the way that I have learned to cope with my stuff over the years. And so I went back to that. And I kept getting caught up on probation. And so I kept getting locked up. My PO had put a tether on me, you know, and I'm just I found a job. I would work during the week and then we'll have to go drive myself to the jail to turn myself in and spend weekends in jail. And then they would let me out on Sunday and I would have to go back to work Sunday night.
Yeah.
And so in that, I just got really sick and tired of doing that. You know, I got sick and tired of doing that. So I stopped drinking. And I ended up getting off probation 8 months early. And so that's when I really like started traveling and stuff. But then I went back into drugs and alcohol again because I didn't have that leash on me. You know what I'm saying? I have nobody to report to. I didn't have any of that. And so at this point, my addiction had got way worse. But this time I started as like a way of trying to cope with my mom's death because I was so hurt. So hurt. Like I had so many questions for God. God. but I never like told him off. I just like, God, what did I do so wrong? You know what I'm saying? What did I do so wrong to where like this is my life? Like, you know, I learned my lesson when I was in jail, you know what I'm saying? And I had so many plans. Like when I get out, 2020 is gonna be my year, not to even know like I'm gonna be hurting for real, you know? So I got into drugs. My way of coping became drugs. I was so promiscuous. I started dealing with so many women. Like I was sleeping with women left and right, like left and right, you know. And I was shocked, you know, I was shocked. And at this time, like my son was out of town with my ex-wife or whatever. So I would just work. I was a workaholic, shopping, drinking, and just being very promiscuous. And I really didn't care. Like I didn't care at all. I was so empty and broken and just nothing could fill my void. Nothing. Like people gifted me this, doing this and that for me. And it just still was like, okay, like, you know, and I just didn't really give a care. I didn't have really a care in the world except for outside of my son. Like I didn't care about nothing. Like, you know, because it was not, I guess you could say like my heart became cold. I wouldn't go around treating people like crap, but if you want to be in my space, then I'm going to do me. And if you don't like it, like, you know, you just don't have to deal with me. That was my attitude for a while. Due to the hurt and things like that. And like, so like when my mom passed, she passed away a few days before her birthday. And then my birthday is a few days after her birthday. So this all happened like a couple days before my 30th birthday, you know? So every time like the month of September will roll around, I will be so just broken all over again. And then I get a break come October. Then you got the holidays and stuff rolling back through, you know? So, yep. So I just couldn't catch my breath. So then I just was working a whole lot. And when I say I got so far off into drugs, like ecstasy, really, to be particular, like I didn't really get back into cocaine because I didn't like the way it made me feel coming down. And then I knew how hard it was to initially get off of that. And also too, I'm like, I don't want my mom seeing me like using cocaine, like, you know, after she passed. So I did it a few times, like after she passed. And then I'm just like, this is just not for me no more. So I got into taking a lot of pills. And I tried other drugs too. Like I tried mushrooms. I even smoked, like just all type of stuff. I just really didn't care. I was just really trying to numb like the void that was in me, you know? Yeah. And so things just started spiraling back downhill. I ended up, I could just tell, like, it was just so much wrong going on in my life. I just, like, it became plain as day. Oh, no, let me back up. So this place that I was staying in, right, to make a long story short, it was a lot of stuff that was going on in that place. I started having some weird stuff happening around my house. I was staying there for a few years. This was after I had, you know, got out of incarceration, lost my mom, all that good stuff. I started, like one day I ordered some shoes and they came up missing off my porch. So this sparked like just a happening of events. You know, I would work third shift, so I would come home in the morning and I would see footprints up to like me and my son's bedroom window. You know, this being wintertime in Michigan, we get a lot of snow, you know. So I would get off work in the morning and it would be like big feet print. I'd have never had mail company or anything like that, you know, and let alone somebody be creeping around my windows, you know, like my windows. So I started telling the office, and mind you, I'm staying right across from the office, you know. So I'm like, if they bold enough to do this right across from the office, like, you know, what's going on? So I got cameras in my home and I got a dog. And so with me working third shift, like I would dial into the cameras on my phone and check on my puppy. And so one day I'm sitting there at home and the dog is in the kitchen eating and I'm sitting just in a chair, like scrolling Facebook or something. And you know how like at home, your kitchen stove, like how you got the oven part and then you have the bottom broiler part and it's that space in between, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there and I happen to look up and in that space between the oven and the broiler, I can see a set of eyes looking at my dog.
I don't know why I knew you was about to say a set of eyes.
A set of eyes looking at my dog. When I say, I'm like, You know, I'm like, what type of rodent is this? You know, because prior to that, I would get a little scent here and there, like, you know, just a different type of scent. When I would have company, I'd be like, y'all don't smell that? And they no. And so I'm like, I'm thinking it's a pest, like some type of pest. But I'm like, whatever this is really smart. You know what I'm saying? Because my dog is not picking up on whatever this is. And it's looking right at my dog, you know? So I take my phone and I'm trying to record it, you know what I'm saying? So I can see what it is at a later time. Like, you know, because I didn't want to get up close to that. So it looks at me. It looks at me. And so I lean back in my chair a little because at this point I'm scared. Like, you know, I didn't know what was going on. And I look back again, it's looking right at me. So I started calling pest control companies at this point, right? And so a few weeks after that, I'm cleaning up one day. This was a Sunday. And I run out of cigarettes. And so I'm like, let me take the puppy to the store with me. But this, every time I walk past my oven, this is playing in my mind because what is this in my house? You know what I'm saying? So I get by the front door. And so I get down on my hands and my knees and I use my phone to zoom in so I can see it. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't want to get close to whatever it was. Long story short, my dog ran back in the kitchen. And the dog is in there screaming, like, you know what I'm saying? You can hear something jump out, and the dog is in there screaming. Of course, I'm not going to go back in there and look and see what's going on. So I take my camera that's up on the shelf, and I try to, like, put it on the kitchen counter to catch a glimpse of it. So I'm screaming the dog name. The dog won't come from the back. And so he did a few minutes later. When he come back, he can't barely walk. He just, like, out of it. You know what I'm saying? So then a few minutes later, like, I realized we got out the house. I realized my keys are still in this house, right? So I go, like, they hanging up right by the door. So I open up the door. When I say, that's when I realized that I was dealing with some spiritual stuff, okay? Some spiritual stuff. And it was like a green mist, but it was like in the shape of some type of beast standing right in my kitchen, but it was looking right at me. From that moment on, like, I didn't realize it, but from that moment on, that's when I realized I had started having spiritual encounters, right? And so I stopped staying in my home. Like, come to find out that because it was in a modular home, come to find out that community where they put that modular them homes at, that's the it used to be an old burial ground.
Oh.
Yeah, it used to be an old burial ground. And I did not know that, like, living there. You know what I'm saying? At first, like, before all this happened, I would wake up with scratches and stuff on me, like, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't even know it until I would go, like, I would feel it where it would start hurting again, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, something's going on, like, you know? But seeing that green beast, like, mist in my kitchen and it was there for hours. After that, I stopped staying in that house. I was paying the rent and kept my furniture and stuff there for a year. But I was not going anywhere in there, you know? And so when, like, from that day, when I ran that camera back, you could hear whatever it was on the camera, but I was in the house while it was happening. I couldn't hear, I could just hear the dog screaming.
Wow.
And when I ran that camera back, you could hear whatever it was, like, going crazy. So from there, right, I started seeking out paranormal people that specialize in paranormal activity. So when I first reached out to them, they said that they didn't see nothing. It was just me tripping. So one day we took one of my friends' cat over there, right? And the same thing happened to the cat. When she took her cat in there and I'm watching on the camera, you could see the whole atmosphere just shift. You could see it because the camera was picking up on stuff that the blind eye wouldn't see. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the paranormal team, I started paying them to come into my house. I would never go in there. I would just be sitting outside the house in my truck watching what they doing on the camera. They was coming in my house making contact with these demons. They was bringing in, like, these machines where you could make contact with whatever and you could listen to them talk. It was demons in there playing like my mom. You know, demons can take on the role of anything. They was playing. One of them was in there playing like my mom, playing like it was my mom, telling the people to tell me to come back home and miss me. It was going to protect me, all this stuff, right? But that never resonated with my spirit. You know what I'm saying? Even with me being in a world of sin, that don't make sense. I know that we don't die and stay here. Plus, my mom got 3 other kids. She's not going to be sticking around my house all day long.
Right.
You know, so one of them was trying to play it like it was my mom, and then the other one was trying to play like it was my grandpa because my grandpa had passed away in 2012. And it was just a madness, right? So in that time, like I was not staying at home. I was just bouncing around to staying at different people's houses. I was not staying there. I'm not, you know, I'm scared of the unknown. So about a year into that, where I was staying at, they ended up doing an illegal eviction on me, right? Come to find out, the whole burial ground situation, like that right there explained a whole lot. So bouncing around to people's houses, and don't get me wrong, like at this time I was using drugs, but I knew I was not crazy. I knew I was not crazy. Like that's one of the things that really made me start sobering up, because I'm like, if this is something spiritual that I'm dealing with, you know, this could get real deep. So shortly after that, like, I was at a friend's house one night, and she was saging, right? She was saging, and I ain't never really looked into like sage and crystals and stuff. I just know it's not really of God. But I was at her house while she was saging, and I was standing outside her bedroom door, and you know how like when you close the door, you can feel the wind from the door closing. It was like that, but I could feel a demonic entity jump on me from being in that house while she was saging, and I could feel it. It felt like a monkey on my back. And it jumped on and it got off. Huh?
I said, ooh wee.
It jumped on and it got off, and then it jumped back on and got off. So later on at night, I get to work, and it started doing it again while I'm working, right? But this time it didn't get off. It stayed on. It stayed on, and it stayed on me for about 3 weeks. And when I say anytime I would mention the name of God, anytime I prayed, anytime I did anything, even when I would get on my phone and check the cameras in my house, this thing would get violent with me. Like it would cause so much pain up my back. Just even, it didn't matter. It was terrible. And so one day while the paranormal team had came, and they was making contact with these demons, the guy came out, and he comes out of that house, and he's like, it's a real evil entity in that house. And he like, it's something in there protecting you. And even in the midst of my sin, I'm like, no, it's not something. It's God protecting me. Like, you know, it's God protecting me. And so they rubbed me down with holy water. And when I say I could just feel it leave my body. And I felt so free after that. And from that, I started like carrying crystals and stuff, you know, knowing that I shouldn't have been doing that. Like during that, I was carrying crystals, burning sage, all that stuff, like trying to cleanse or whatever, you know?
Right.
So like fast forward some, I had started experiencing so much spiritual warfare, like to where everything in my life was just going wrong, from my identity being stolen. Come to find out, when I was incarcerated, my identity was stolen. You know, my bank account had got hacked, like my phone. It was just terrible, you know, and it just like, even in the midst of sin, I'm like, yo, the devil is fighting me, because it was so much wrong going on. I'm like, the devil is fighting me. It's something that God is doing behind the scenes, you know. It's something that God is doing behind the scenes, you know. And like, and then I started feeling a sense of urgency in my spirit about heaven and hell, you know. And one night I was riding in the car with this chick, and I was high on pills, and I had been drinking some beer, and clear as day, I heard, my spirit was ringing about like getting right, getting out of that lifestyle. And I clear as day, I can hear, you could be dead by Friday. And when I'm like, I'm in the car, music is blasting. And when I say, I'm like, I'm not finna die and go to hell. I'm not finna die and go to hell.
Wow.
I'm not finna die and go to hell. You know, and I'm like,
you don't get no clearer than that.
So loud. It scared me. So loud. Over the music, you know what I'm saying? It was over the music, all that. Like, clear as day. Clear as day.
You could be dead by Friday.
You could be dead by Friday.
Shook your whole soul.
Yeah.
Ooh, wee.
Yep. And with that, and then I would get on TikTok and just see a whole bunch of videos like about heaven and hell and just all this stuff. And I knew that God was trying to speak to me. Like I could feel, as far gone as I was in the addiction and just the way I was living, like it would be so many days where I would be like, I know I can't do this forever. Like at this pace, I'm going to either die or I'm going to be locked up. Like, you know, but I could just feel like the death angel was on me. Like, I'm like, yo, if I don't get it together, like I'm going to die in this, you know? And I'm like, I'm not finna give my soul to the devil like that. I'm not.
Right.
You know, so I started, even in my drinking, and I still was taking drugs for a minute, but I started like cutting out secular music and just started listening to gospel. I started getting in my Bible, even in that, you know. And one night I was up all night and I was just in my feelings about my mom, you know what I'm saying? And I talked to one of my aunties and I just was expressing to her, like, you know, auntie, I got so many questions for God, but you know, being raised like under this religious spirit, we taught, you better not question God. You better not question God. The church that I was raised in, it was a religious church, you know. We was taught, if you ain't in your Sunday's best, you better not walk up in this church, things like that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of that kept me away from God for years because I'm like, I know that was my image of God. That's who I thought God was. You know, if you ain't in your Sunday's best, you can't come talking to God, you know? So a lot of that kept me away from God. You know, I'm like, I can't approach the throne of God like this. You know, I'm a hot mess. And I was never like, I'm not going to fake the funk with God. I know that I'm not living right. So I'm not going to play with God. I'm going to just get this out of my system and then go to God, you know? Right. And I expressed all this to my auntie and she was just telling me like, you can ask God questions, you know, if you really want to know, ask him and he'll answer. So later on that night, I'm getting ready for Bible study. I started attending weekly Bible studies on Saturday. I was still drugging and drinking and whatever. But they had assigned us scriptures to read for the following day for Bible study. So I read them scriptures and it was now that I look back, it wasn't nothing but God because it was like a link at the bottom of the page and I kept reading. And when I say I knew that God was speaking to me in that, he answered every single question that I had. And I'm sitting there drinking a beer as I read the Bible. When I say my jaw dropped, I was in full-blown tears. This was my but God moment. When I say in that moment, I knew what it was when people say, oh, the pages, you know when God's speaking because the words going to jump up off the page into your spirit. I had my but God moment right there with my Budweiser, with the drugs in my system. You know what I'm saying? With all that. And every single question that I asked, that I was expressing to my auntie on the phone earlier that day, he answered it, every single one. Every single one. So if it's anybody out there that feel like you a complete mess or you done did this or did that, or, you know what I'm saying, you can't approach God like this, or he can't love me past that, that's a complete lie. One thing that God has told me, now that I'm intentional with him, he told me everything that you thought you knew about me, throw it out and let's start over.
Ooh, man.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes. And I've done just that. And when I say from that moment on, I have been addicted. I have been addicted.
Got a new addiction now.
I have been addicted to God now, you know, and I have been clean for over 15 months now.
Drop them hearts for that, man. Drop them hearts for that, man.
But the one thing that God has just shown me, he showed me his true character, right? And when I first started becoming intentional with God, I asked God for healing from everything in my past because I was still deeply hurt, and I'm still healing because it's not a one and done situation. It's a continuous, intentional lifestyle. Like, you know, God will start the healing, but it's up to us to make the intentional decision every single day. I'm going to walk in this healed version of me, you know, and live this version of me versus because I have one bad day, I'm going to resort to this broken person, you know? So when I got with God, one of the first things that I asked God for was healing. I'm like, Lord, I need healing. Like, I need healing, not just from the loss of my mom, but I need healing from so much. Like, you know, everything that happened in my past. I want to be whole, make me new. Like, fill that void that can't nobody else seem to feel, you know?
Yeah.
And the first thing that he told me to do was forgive. And Look, the way God works, he's something else. I tell him all the time, God, you are something else. Because when he told me to forgive, not only just the people, like it was a few people that came right to mind, but in my prior years, I really wasn't a person to hold grudges. I would just kind of wash my hands with you and be done and just move on with life go on. He had me double back to those people too. And not only forgive them, but he made me, well, he didn't make me because God gave us free will, but he had me forgive those people and then double back and apologize to them for handling them with unforgiveness. I'm like, God, you want me to do what?
Yep.
I ain't do nothing. No, they did it to me.
I'm gonna need you to do. I'm gonna need that from you. Oh yeah, that's him.
But you know what? And I'm not gonna lie. Another thing that he told me was like, when you're doing this, don't just do it just to say you did it. Like really do it. You know, and I'm not gonna lie. A few people I had to sit with for a few days. Like, you know, I had to sit with them and I had to take it straight to God. Lord, I don't really care for this person. Like, you know, I don't really care for this person. I don't really care for the ways that they treated me, you know. I need you to work this, take this sword off my heart for this person. You know, I need you to work this up out of me so that I can find it in me to do it with a wholehearted, you know, be wholehearted about it, you know. And he did. And when I say that right there was what jump started the healing process for me.
Forgiveness. Hoo-wee.
Forgiveness. And now, fast forward to now, I am clean and sober. I'm just, you know, one day at a time.
Yeah.
One day at a time. And I'm just, you know, now I'm intimate with God. Like, God has shown me his true character. Like, God is completely different than what I thought he would be. I mean, yes, God is just and he's great and he's mighty, you know, but he's so understanding and he's so loving and he's so merciful and my mom used to say, girl, God is the bomb. And now I get it.
It's deep.
You know,
look, I usually close out with asking, like, if you could tell anybody who's going through something, what would you tell? You didn't already did it. You didn't already did it. You didn't already said it. It's like I can't even ask you the closing question. You didn't already said it.
You know what? And I would like, if it's to somebody that's out there going through something, because life get hard, it do, you know. And we're human, so it's okay to be. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay not to be okay. Like, it don't matter what nobody else say. This is your life. Like, walk in the fullness of being free to express how you feel. Like, acknowledge your feelings. It's okay to have a bad day, you know, but it's not the fact that you had a bad day. Just don't stay there.
Yeah.
Just don't stay there, you know, and journal because it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, before we get off, I want you to walk us through this. Mm-hmm. Walk us through this. Tell us about this before we go. Tell us about this right here. GreatGrowthLLC.com. Tell us about this.
So that's my online t-shirt and hoodie store. It is faith-based and is in support of the formerly incarcerated population. Because God has walked me into the work that I do now. I have 2 jobs. I work in a nonprofit where we do advocacy work for the formerly incarcerated population. The entire organization is made up of all formerly incarcerated people with a collective served time of over 400 years. Second job, I coordinate a program for current probationers. So we provide wraparound services like 12-step anger management, things like that. So in honor of people that need second chances, because we all need second chances, 3rd, 4th, 5th, we need second chances. God blessed me with this brand to birth in honor of my faith and the fact that everybody deserves second chances.
Look, tell us about the book.
So the back of my day is just about my life. God wanted me to write this book and put it on paper and get it out there. It's about my life. It's some more. I think y'all heard a lot from me today. It's some more stories that I give in depth, just about different things in my life, different things where, you know, we were abused as kids, how I came out of that, my journey, different things like that.
Yeah. Look, I am blown away by this story. I'm encouraged by this story. I wanted to hear it in detail, and I'm amazed by the stuff that you did walk through. I'm serious.
It's not forgot.
And look, and the fact that you're able to give back and help others that walk through that is even more amazing. So I commend you on that. Continue to do what you do. Look, we have walked a mile in Asia Wilson's shoes. Look, we appreciate you. And look, I haven't shared my testimony yet, but I know you first on the list. Whenever it's time for me to share, just get ready.
Yes, please let me know. I would love to have you on the show.
Hey, get ready.
Okay. Well, we're ready when you are.
And look, we appreciate you again, and we thank everybody for tuning in. Like I said, with a mile in Asia's shoes, look, I'm blown away. Look, I always get the phone calls, and I go to talk to the wife after we finish it. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all, and we will be back with the next one. Y'all have a good night, man.
No, he hears your heart's cry. Hold on to his words. Lean on him. It gets better by and by.
And to my queens, I see y'all in a different way. It's more to y'all than posing pictures on your Facebook page. God giving power to uplift a man, to make a slave, speak life into our dreams, or tear us down and watch us fade away. Know your position, cause you're vital to the family structure, no replacing any mother. Careful how you treating love. Elegant, heaven sent etiquette is like no other. Her love is better than buttered biscuits right out the oven. Know who you are, don't let this world define. Shape or mold you, God's daughter, queen of nations. There's no box to ever hold you. Life creator, womb protector, heaven sent, love injector, backbone, best gift ever, worth more than hidden treasure. I speak life, cause this world is trying to turn you cold. Replace that heart of stone with flesh. We need your love to make us whole. Kick back your crown and hold us down. Together, we won't forget back to love how God intended. Change to make this family.
Even though this life is tough, said you gotta keep